Hey, I'm Kayla. Welcome back to my channel. I have a fun one today. I'm taking on another one book in one day challenge. You may have seen me take on Beach Read by Emily Henry earlier this summer. I did a whole comprehensive vlog and ended up not loving the book as much as I hoped. So today, I've decided that I will take on another Emily Henry book during a one book, one day challenge so I can just eat this book up and see if that's the style that I like to read Emily Henry books in. Because I will say, I thought Beach Read was a beautiful story. Like I said, I have a whole vlog about my thoughts, but as a romance book, it just didn't do it for me. And I'm someone that has been reading romance for a while. I don't know if it's that I have high romance standards or I just know when I fall in love with characters, I fall hard. The book in question of today is Emily Henry's Book Lovers. I 5 minutes ago opened the back of the book to see how many pages it was, and it is 372 pages. Wowza. It is just before 12:30, and funny enough, I told myself, Kayla, you should start this book this morning and then jump on and do your intro later, but alas, life caught me, and we are starting now. Have not even cracked it. Actually, until this morning, I hadn't even read the synopsis of this book. And I did pick it up a couple weeks ago at my library after my election day trip. If you've read this one, or if you've read the synopsis, you may know what's going on. We have Nora Stevens as our female main character, and she is obsessed with books. And Nora girl, I gotta agree. She is actually a literary agent, a cutthroat one at that, and she works really hard to make sure her clients get the best deals. So Libby, seeing that Nora works so incredibly hard, wants her to take a month off and spend time in Sunshine Falls, North Carolina. Just a sistership away, reconnection, girlhood, all that fun stuff. And then we have to have a male main character. Of course, it's a romance, or rather, we need a other main character for our main character to fall in love with. Maybe a few. And that is Charlie. And Charlie is a grumpy, brooding editor. And unfortunately, this is someone she knows from her real life. And they have met before, and it's just never good. Never good. So they both have this connection of books. They're in this small town together, and they just keep running into each other. It's giving forced proximity. It's giving enemies to lovers. I think this one's going to be a great journey. So without further ado, I need to jump in and get reading. What I'm going to do this time that I didn't do the last is set myself a timer. So it is 12:27 right now. I was right on. We are right at 12:30. Let's get reading. Check in. I'm only 35 pages in, but Emily Henry has such a wonderful way of setting up a story and getting you hooked into the location. Her sister is actually pregnant at the moment. She's pregnant with her third child, and she's really stressed out. And so she pitches this trip to her sister, Nora, because the place they're going to go is the setting of one of Nora's clients' books. and her sister loves it. So they're gonna go. Libby has concocted this whole checklist of small town things they're going to do, and they're all centered around getting Nora a romance, some love in her life, a whirlwind. She's had a couple breakups, and all of these breakups have occurred because the guy has decided to leave town and leave his life for something new. It feels almost cruel to Nora. She reads and, she is an editor, so she's always in these stories, and she feels like she can predict what's going to happen in a book. And this, she feels like she's that character, like the other woman back in the city when the new, big corporation comes into town and they're going to shut down the local Christmas tree shop. And the guy that comes is attractive and falls in love with the shopkeeper's daughter and that kind of stuff. She's watched it happen to her not once, not twice, but 4 times now. And she thinks it is just the world's playing a cruel joke on her. The other element that we have in play here is our prologue opened up 2 years in the past, and it shows our male and our female main character meeting for the first time. They have this meeting, and Nora is actually late for it because she is getting the call that her boyfriend at the time is breaking up with her. Not a great day for her, not a great meeting in general, and in the time since they have, it seems like, not really crossed paths on purpose, but she has kept up tabs on Charlie. She knows what's going on. I am going to keep crushing through. There's just something so romantic about Emily Henry's writing and this story's ability to suck you in right off the get. I will say, I think this is there's going to be like a good familial aspect to this book. I can see Libby and Nora's relationship as sisters weighing really heavy on Nora at the start of the book. She doesn't feel like they are as in sync as they have been in years past. And so this trip is really them taking time to connect back to each other. Hi, I feel like I'm jumping back on super quick. I'm only on page 56 now, but I just have to say our female and male main character, Nora and Charlie, they have fantastic chemistry. Like fantastic chemistry off the bat. Their banter, oh my. I am having a very different experience than I did when I was reading Beach Read. I love them. And Nora, I mentioned earlier, she like keeps referring to herself as the evil stepmother because that's what she feels like she is portrayed as, which is awesome to me. And that's not off the bat what I would typically love out of a character, but I love it out of her. She like mentioned she listens to her own cackle and it sounds like she's the evil stepmother, and I'm just loving that element of this book. Gonna keep reading. I am 90 pages in to Book Lovers. Ooh, there's something about this one I really like. My plan was to keep reading, but unfortunately I had some responsibilities pop up, so I had to take a pause. I will give you a glance at the timer. I haven't checked it myself actually, but I think I know kind of where we're at. Are 3 hours and 54 minutes into my reading challenge so far. It is just about to be 4:30 p.m. I have a couple things I want to do on my computer, so I'm responsible, and then I'm going to try to sit back down by 5 o'clock and keep reading. I've been reading Book Lovers, and I have some notes. And don't worry, they're actually good ones this time. I am loving this story. The only thing that I'm upset about is the fact that I couldn't just sit down and completely binge this book like I had intended. It's almost 7 o'clock at night, and unfortunately, I had to step away from reading this afternoon, so I haven't gotten any further than 90 pages in. I think I'm right at the start of the 7th chapter. Everything I thought about beach read and the characters getting together, like complete opposite with Book Lovers. I'm obsessed with Nora and Charlie. I love her. One of the things that I've noticed going into my second Emily Henry book is that she writes these incredibly intelligent, witty female main characters. They are strong, they are sarcastic, and I fall in instant love with them. I remember talking about January from Beach Read, saying that she is, what did I say? January Edwards needs to be protected at all costs. I wholeheartedly believed that. And she is a much softer female main character than Nora is, our Book Lovers girl. Wow! And I just love it. Like the references to her being an ice queen, and I love that she just owns that. She's like, yeah, whatever. Call me the shark. I got blood in my teeth. It's awesome. It's right what it's like exactly what I needed right now. She plays this very likable villain. She is composed, she's the cool girl. And it's funny because she talks about her little sister Libby, who is pregnant, and she talks about Libby like she is a goddess and that she never has a hair out of place and everything that she touches just turns out working well for her. But I think Nora has a lot of these really same characteristics. Nora herself is a really put together, composed person. And I think it also makes her an intimidating person, an intimidating woman. It's fun to watch her. They're in a small town, watch her interact with other townspeople. And I think sometimes Nora doesn't understand her own power and strength, even though she doesn't need anyone to tell her that she is a high powered literary agent. She recognizes the strength in her career, but I don't necessarily know if she recognizes that strength within herself outside of her career and outside of championing for her clients and her authors, rather. Can she champion for herself? Very excited to get back into this one. It's going to be, I'm going to read some tonight. I will let you know. My new hope is that I'm able to crush this one by tomorrow. I also picked this is a pretty long book to finish in one day. When I did Yellow Face, it was just over the 300 page mark. I think it was like 320 pages, and I got a little bit of a head start in the morning, which helped me out. So, okay, back to reading, and I'll let you know how it goes. Well, hello. It is a new day. It is actually the next day. So, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to take down Book Lovers in my one book in one day challenge, but I freaking love this book. It's so good. The chemistry, the characters, the writing, everything is so good. Last night I was a little tired, but I did want to read some, and I ended up taking down 25 pages. I stopped when I could feel myself, start to nod off a little into my book. I stopped because I want to make sure I'm reading this one while I'm fully there. I have a couple notes. I thought chapters 7 and 8 were so much chemistry. Their banter, I love it. I think their banter is some of the best banter I've read in a while. And one of the things that I've noticed I don't love about books is when they have overly long, like texting conversations. It's realistic, I get it, but I don't love reading it. But I'm not bothered. They text and email a lot, or they have in the first third of the book, I will say. And it doesn't bother me because they're just so witty. And the messages that they sent each other are like the ones that they send each other are worth it. So I'm really enjoying that. The other aspect of this book is its sisters and its family and friendship, and I understand where the Libby character is coming for. That's Nora's sister. She's pregnant. She's a little younger, but because she's married and has 2 children, one on the way, there's just different varying levels of life that these 2 sisters are at. So they're taking this trip to really try to get back to each other. But Libby is also looking for herself before her newborn is born, and that takes away another chunk of who Libby is outside of being a mother. Libby also has these grand plans for Nora and her. They have this checklist that they're going to take on. One of the things that I don't really love is Libby's background is in event planning, and she comes to this small town, and one of her items on the checklist is that she's going to save a local business. And this storyline is cringy for me for a lot of reasons. I don't understand why Libby thinks that she's like the authority on helping these businesses. I don't know if these businesses want help. That's the other thing. She's coming into town for not even, I think she might be there a full month. So I know that. So yeah, that's giving me a little bit of the ick. And that's a storyline that isn't fully teased out yet. Libby just kind of had the idea when she saw the local bookstore in town, if she could save it. But yeah, not loving that part of it. One thing I did love this morning is when I picked up and I read. So I read about 25 pages last night, and then I've read probably about 30 to 40 pages this morning. I'm on page 150 now. There was a Law and Order Special Victims Unit mention, and I'm a huge SVU fan. It's also Law and Order Thursday, so new episode tonight. We enjoy that. The other fun little note that I found in here was that in the bookstore, Nora meets Sally Good, who is the owner of said bookstore. Shoot, I gotta make that a spoiler if you haven't read Beach Read. Whoops, I'll do that. Store. And she mentions the Great Family Marconi, which the Great Family Marconi is the novel January Edwards writes in Beach Read. And so Sally mentions that Charlie, our main character here, is the editor of that book, which is awesome. And now part of me is like, is Charlie in Beach Read? I don't really remember. I remember her agent. I feel like her agent was a woman, but I don't know if we ever got to that process. Like who would edit her book once it was. And then the other and final note that I have is that these characters have chemistry for literal days. Like so much. So much chemistry. I can't stand it. And by can't stand it, I mean I freaking love it. I love them. We're going to keep reading. I will keep updating you. I am less than halfway through this book right now. I would put it on Goodreads, but all my devices are not in front of me. A little over 200 pages left. I am going to be able to take this one down today. I've declared it, and I will keep you along for the ride. Hey babe, I have some. Hello, we are back in the bedroom for some cozy reading. When I last checked in, I was on page 151. I read about 80 or so pages. I'm on 237 now. I'm continuing to love this book more and more and more as we get into the meat of the story. We had a couple things happen in this act. Nora is really starting to put the pieces together that this trip with Libby doesn't really make that much sense. She's over 5 months pregnant. She's left 2 children under the age of 6, and now they're with her mother-in-law. She's also left her husband, and Nora's doing the math on these things, and she's like, wait, this isn't all adding up. At one point during this chunk of the book I read, Libby's husband reaches out to Nora and like checks in and is like, is everything okay? How's Libby? And Nora's really taken aback by this because they don't really text that much. And from Nora's perspective, Libby has been checking in with her husband every day. And then she thinks about it. She hasn't actually heard those calls happening. And I remember, not in this section of the book that I read, but earlier in a part I read yesterday, Nora mentions Libby being sucked into her phone texting, and like mentions that it might be Libby's husband. But now I'm thinking that that absolutely wasn't. I don't remember what his name is, because she's also giving, Libby is giving, like, I'm not telling the truth vibes. Definitely is giving off a lying vibe. She's been disappearing for hours without telling Nora where she's at. They've decided to save the local bookstore, and that's really where Nora has been doing a majority of her work during the day anyways. So Libby's been in and out of the bookstore, but now she keeps running off, not telling Nora where she is, and she's starting to, like I said, do the math. Something's not adding up with her sister, and she's trying to figure out, why exactly are we on this trip? At the beginning of the book, Libby pitches this trip to Nora, but already has the tickets bought. So this was something she was planning. It wasn't like I want to pop the seed into my sister's head. Libby has a motive for wanting to go to Sunshine Falls, and we don't know it yet. Nora and Charlie moments are giving me absolute life. They are tiptoeing around each other, and typically when this type of trope happens in books where there is the reason that two characters can't be together, it kind of drives me a little cuckoo, but I like it in this sense because I think it's done in a really nuanced way, and it helps that they're both, Nora's looking at this from in the first, when she starts potentially thinking about having feelings about Charlie, she's taken aback because she doesn't kiss where she works. I don't remember what the actual line was, but you know what that saying is. And so she doesn't want to get involved with Charlie because of his direct correlation to the publishing world in New York and the scene that is where they work. But it's not like they're working for the same company. There's no power structure dynamic between them. It's purely arbitrary that they can't be together, and but it's not done in a way where I feel like they're tortured by it. They're very much both giving in to these moments with each other. Like, the chemistry is there. They're not fighting it. They're trying to dampen it as much as they can. And I find that the excuses that they have for not being with each other are getting very, very thin at this point. And then the one thing that keeps happening, and I have a feeling that it's more symbolic than also just annoying. It's Nora's phone going off and interrupting all of these moments. It feels like very often, and you hear Nora's inner dialogue of how trained she is to her phone earlier in the book when one of her writers calls her a few times and she texts her back and says she's going to call her. She forgets and she misses the call that evening, and you see just like the panic Nora goes through, not being there right in the moment where somebody in her life needed her. And that's one of Nora's anxieties that really makes it hard for her to be anything but a seemingly cold or mechanic person, because she's truly just so worried all of the time. It's a really nice way to make outward traits and appearances of characters be so much more complex and show how complex these characters can be. It's a really gorgeous thing about Emily Henry's writing. I also realize I every time I was saying January Edwards, I was like, that's not her name. But it was close enough that I was like, that's it. No. The character from Beach Read is January Andrews. Andrews, not Edwards. So close. Like very, very close in my mind. And she did get an actual shout out, like the scene I mentioned earlier that I ended up flagging as spoiler. It's just after 4 p.m. I'm gonna keep cranking through. I keep forgetting to put this in Goodreads to see the actual percentage I have left, but there you go. You can see the little part of the book is the part that I have left to read. This one's just about 380 pages, so I have what, about 150 left? And I found myself a couple times. I'm an excited reader, so sometimes when I'm in a scene, especially a Nora and Charlie scene, I find myself wanting to just like skip to the dialogue because I want the dialogue and the banter to come in the quick succession that I would hear it in my head. Yes, that's how deeply I think about these books. So I am purposefully stopping myself from doing that, which is actually a little hard. And a note about that, I do go back and read like the in between, but it's like I hear it in my head, and I don't listen to audiobooks, which is weird, but I do. So yeah, I hear the dialogue in my head as I'm reading it, and then I'll go back and all of the, detailed text in between. But I'm stopping myself from doing that here because I want to take the story all in as intended, and slowing myself down is good practice. Back to reading. I'll check in when I have something check-in worthy. I forgot I stopped at a part. They're going to the library. I love the library. Excuse me, I am unwell. Unwell. I am on page 300. We just found out some critical information about our male main character, and finding that information out puts a few other book plots, just makes them all make so much more sense now. And I'm nervous. I'm really nervous, but wow, it's so funny because they're editing a book together and they're finishing up the book, and Charlie asks Nora, like, are you ready? And she says, ready. It's a truth and a lie. Does anyone ever want to finish a good book? And I've literally never felt anything so deep because, and now I don't. I'm nervous. I'm real nervous. This is such a beautiful tale. This chunk wasn't all just Nora and Charlie. We had a lot of really good Nora and Libby resolutions. There are definitely still secrets going on between the sisters, but they did have a talk. There are some more things that are out in the open, and I think they're learning to understand each other as adults better, which is really the reason for this trip. They're both trying to evolve the relationship they have with each other. Your Nightmare Brain is my absolute favorite. Charlie. So yeah, I had to jump on because I was like literally making sounds somewhere between a scream and a screech. I don't like to scare the neighbors, but I did get Adam's attention. I am going to crush this tonight. I think I'm gonna have to make a little dinner. I don't want to walk away where I'm at right now, but I'll just stretch it out even longer. So yeah, still absolutely 100% loving this one so much. Well, hello. Let me just start off by saying I really hope I deleted the clip of me saying, of course I'm going to finish this book tonight. I am going to crush this tonight. That, of course, was yesterday. And, of course, I did not finish said book. But I gotta say, I believe I have industrial strength, willpower to walk away from the point of book lovers I was at. If you recall, I was at page 300 and the storm had rolled in, the power had gone out. The scene was truly set absolutely perfectly. So good. So somehow I ripped myself away, gave my last update, and then by the time I was able to come back and start reading, I didn't have enough time and I couldn't do the book justice. So I just let it sit. I woke up this morning, made a cup of Mexico. I'm a Nespresso drinker. That's my favorite cup. Sat on my couch and I crushed the last 72 pages. It was just beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. This is a 5-star read for me, hands down. I don't remember the last time a couple had me like kicking my feet giddy, like excited. I mentioned earlier in this vlog the banter that Charlie and Nora have are just, it's unmatched. They are both so witty and smart. It was so good. It was so, so good. So I have a good bit of notes. Okay, first I want to talk about the sister reveal that we got with Libby and Nora. It made a lot more sense once it all happened, honestly. I thought something was going on, but I admittedly guessed wrong. But when I went back and I thought about all the parts of the story, I could see how we were leading to this moment. So I liked that we had that get resolved. It wasn't resolved immediately in this section, but it was resolved with just enough time to make it all work. And yeah, again, once this was revealed to me, I thought back and I was like, yeah, why would Libby just like up and leave her family? She's pregnant. It doesn't really make sense until It really does. And in this, there's a little bit of a fight that happens with a resolution that comes. We get to see Nora do something she hasn't in a very long time. And that's two things actually. We get to see her be vulnerable and we get to see her cry. She is vulnerable to Charlie, and by being vulnerable, she really opens herself up. By opening up to Charlie, she gains what she needed out of this trip, and it's perspective. It's perspective on her life and her choices. It really helps guide her when she does come to the resolution with Libby. And I loved that Nora and Charlie strengthened each other. I felt it throughout the whole book. Charlie talks about how lonely it is sometimes being on the outside of his family. Charlie expresses feeling like he lets down his family. On page 329, he says, "Look, whenever I'm here, it feels like the walls are closing in on me. I love my family, I do. But I've spent 15 years coming home as rarely as possible because it's fucking lonely to feel like you don't fit somewhere. I never wanted to run this store. I never wanted this town, and whenever I'm here, it's all I think about. I get so fucking claustrophobic from it all. Not from them, but from feeling like I don't know how to be myself, from getting in my head about who I'm supposed to be, or all the ways I haven't turned out the way they wanted me." But then he finishes off that statement by putting it back on Nora, saying, "And then you showed up." I just loved this moment. I loved so many moments about this book. In a few pages from this moment, we see the trip end. I thought it was going to end, and it did. What I liked most about the ending, and this will be my spoiler-free ending. I will do a spoilers ending for those of you who have also read it, because I do want to point out some things. I cried. I had about 25 pages left of the book, and the tears came all of the sudden, and they hit so hard, and I was crying about something I was right about, which was cool. It's just such a beautiful story. What I loved about this ending was nobody settled. Nobody compromised. Everybody had to make decisions for themselves and then live with those decisions. And I loved it. I loved it. I loved where we ended up, and I loved how we got there. Now, I do want to do a little spoiler section because there's a couple things I do want to talk a little bit more about. So if you plan on reading the book, maybe skip this section. And if you just really enjoy spoilers, stay with me. Okay, so I wanted to talk about specifically the tears and why that happened. But first, I think I want to go back to saying that nobody settles. And what I meant by that was, oh gosh, Nora says it to Charlie. Like, I think it's like right after they are. Oh, yeah. Okay. On page 352, she says, "A week ago, I liked you so much I would have wanted to try to make this work. I swallow a jagged, fist-sized lump, but still my voice has scraped to get out. But now I think I might love you too much for that." Oh my goodness. I didn't know what to think when Nora and Charlie decided not to do long distance. I wanted to believe that things would be okay, and they were, thankfully. And I think that's what made this story so great, is that Nora still got to take on the job she's always wanted. Nora got to pick herself. She got to go back to the city, and they make it work at the end. I think something that would be so cool, because I'm just really curious about it, is I would have loved to be able to see a chapter from Charlie's perspective. I think if there's ever like bonus chapters that come out, we need a bonus chapter of Charlie in Sunshine Falls while Libby and Brendan are there trying to, they take over the shop and they come with a PowerPoint. I loved it. I just loved it. Oh, it was so good. Literally, I'm getting emotional thinking about how good it was. I think the only other thing I want to say about this book, it did everything so, so right. The other thing I would have loved, and we don't get Charlie's perspective, so it's hard to write this, but I would want a little bit more about Charlie finding himself at home. Like I read that quote earlier, and he talks about Nora being like a really big turning point for him. And like when she showed up, he could finally breathe. And I want to know why. Like what got him to this point? Was it just her seeing him that got them there? What? I would love that. Spoiler section is over. So yeah, even though the characters in the story could have picked an ending that was easy for them in the moment, they don't. And nobody settles and everybody still finds their way. I definitely had a much different reading experience than I had when I was reading Beach Read. And the characters in Beach Read actually come up a couple times in here. Well, January does. I loved this. This, like I mentioned earlier, this is a absolute 5-star read for me. This is actually one that I think I'm gonna purchase. I'll probably purchase it at some point next year. Maybe do a nice little reread. It's technically a summer book, so maybe I'll do that. I have my final. This is a 1 book in 1 day challenge that I failed horribly, but at the end of the day, I loved this book. I got to spend quality time thinking about it, poring over it, so I might have lost, but I'm a true winner as well. I did pause my timer this morning when I finished up the book, so it took me about 46 hours and 23 minutes to finish up this one, and that is both reading when I can and having to do life things. Thank you so much for coming along with me for this great read of Book Lovers by Emily Henry. What Emily Henry book do I need to read next? Please let me know. I'm excited to see what I think of my next read. Do you happen to have a favorite Emily Henry read? And if not, who is your favorite romance author? Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope you have a great day.